The following presentation is part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network.
This is Pete Fletzer, and welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. This week, we're joined by Editor-in-Chief of Cinelinx.com, Jordan Maison. Join us as we talk about his Star Wars journey, the future of cinema, and the state of Star Wars under Kathleen Kennedy. So strap yourselves in, relax, and enjoy this journey around the galaxy. Well, welcome to episode number 105 of Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am your host, Pete Fletzer, and we are a part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network. Thank you so much for joining us. Each week, we bring you a new perspective on Star Wars, whether it's from an author, a creator, an actor, or a super fan. Everybody's the same here on Around the Galaxy. If this is your first trip with us, well, thank you so much for checking us out. We have a great show for you tonight. And if this is a return visit, thank you so much for coming back. This week, we are thrilled to be joined by Jordan Maison. He is the editor-in-chief at Cinelinx.com. He's got bylines on StarWars.com and is an occasional artist for Tops. He went to college for post-production, and he now applies his love of movies and video games into his writing. But before we get started, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, and share Around the Galaxy with your friends and let them know that this might actually be a really good week to check out something new, because this week, we're running a special contest. If you invite a friend and leave a comment with the hashtag BTBDnewbie, BTBD newbie, on this or any of the Beyond the Blast Doors shows on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Blast Doors, you could win a Funko Star Wars collectible for my own private collection. I got a bunch of things that I just don't have room for, and I want to give them to you. Did I say any of the Beyond the Blast Doors shows? I sure did, because we are the only Star Wars fan content network that brings you a new live show every single weeknight. On Mondays, you get Holochronicles talking about all things collectibles. On Tuesdays, you get this show. Wednesday nights, David, Arzu, and Scotty bring you the latest Star Wars news and conversation. And on Thursday, it's the Bombad Cast, and anything goes, free for all of Star Wars fun. I just wrote that today. I think that describes them pretty well. And on Fridays, you get our live call-in show where you are the guest on Force Connect. Well, enough of the commercials. Let's get down to business. Around the Galaxy is pleased to present Jordan Maison. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good for a Tuesday evening. I have to ask, am I saying your name right? Is it Mason or Maison? I think that's sort of a nice sort of French spin. We could. Okay.
I was actually impressed that you had it right. It's Mason. Most people tend to get it wrong the first time.
So I took my best guess. I'm glad I got it. So, Jordan, I've been following you on Twitter for as long as I've been back in the Twitter world. Last couple of years, we both have been dragged by a certain segment of the Star Wars fandom. But tell us a little bit about you and your Star Wars connection, and also tell us a little bit about Cinelinx.
Well, so I've been a fan for a long time, like most of us. For me, it started when I was a kid, back, gosh, I don't even remember. It was a long time ago, right around when, Star Wars has always been a part of me. I mean, I can't even remember the first time I watched them. That's how long it's been around.
Yeah.
I remember really getting into fandom stuff though when the special editions were starting to ramp up and being marketed, and that's when I started getting into the toys, collecting and just seeing that there was actually a bigger world, because that was back before everybody was on the internet, and definitely before I was on the internet, and had no connection to a larger fandom, and didn't really know that there was such a thing.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting because the special edition and then the prequels brought a lot of fans into the Star Wars scene. So you were was your first exposure to, was it like the first films you saw on the big screen? Were they Star Wars or?
No, I mean, they were. No, I'd seen other movies on the big screen before. I remember very clear. Like I said, I don't remember when, but I know that my aunt got me the original VHS trilogy before there were special editions, and I wore the tapes off of those, and then then the special editions were announced, and I saw the trailer for it. I forget which movie. It's probably one of the more a Mortal Kombat movie, depending on when it came out. But I remember seeing the trailer, and I was like, I had to go. I had to see it, and I got lucky enough. I was able to see those original films, of course, with the special editions on the big screen, and that just after that it was all downhill.
So you were you were also a bit of a prequel kid then, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I was actually just starting into middle school and high school when the prequels came out. I think I want to say it was 7th or 8th grade when episode 1 came out. So that's definitely when I was more involved. Got more involved than I ever had been. I was checking updates at school in the school library where the computers were, and they had internet on the computers. And instead of doing my homework, I was on forums and trying to get the latest news and stuff. Right.
Yeah, it was early days, and I remember like you probably were using those computer lab hours like me to try to. I wasn't in computer lab. I was in my late 20s, but God, I'm just, it kills me to say that. But there was the 12-hour download to watch like the trailer or going to, what was it? Was it Benjamin Button that had the trailer attached to it? Yeah,
Benjamin Button and Meet Joe Black. Meet Joe Black was one of them.
Meet Joe Black, yeah. I think that was it instead of Benjamin Button, right? Because they were, all I know was a Brad Pitt film, right?
Yes.
And yeah. I remember I went just for that reason, just to see the trailer, and I just I don't remember obviously I don't remember the movie because I can't even remember it.
Yeah.
So no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I did the same thing. I remember my best friend in high school at the time around the prequels. We, he had his computer at home and the internet and all that stuff. And I remember we started downloading the trailer for episode 2 when we left for school so that we could watch it. And it still hadn't finished by the time we got back home.
I had a similar situation where I started downloading before I went to bed one night and woke up the next day only to find that at some point it had disconnected. And I was like, no, all those hours of my life wasted. Luckily I was sleeping. So
yeah.
So you were a big prequel fan. And so you went off to college to study film post-production, right? Is that right?
Yes. Well, I went for film, general film degree, because I love movies. Star Wars was a big part of that. Star Wars and Jurassic Park are probably the biggest reasons I decided I wanted to go into film. And once I started doing stuff, I found that the thing I loved most was editing and post-production. So I kind of shifted all my focus towards that, and which is funny because I remember, gosh, I forget how old, but I remember when I was a kid and I was reading, everything I could about Star Wars and, all the behind the scenes stuff at the time, how George Lucas had said editing was one of his favorite parts.
Right.
And I remember as a kid thinking, well, I'm going to be an editor like George Lucas. And then I just kind of, forgot about it. And then I really didn't even make the connection until after I was already out of college. And remembered that I'd once thought about that as a kid.
It's funny. I mean, it's. I think the Star Wars films have always, maybe not always, but quite often, have relied on editing to tell the story. I mean, there's so many sort of even video essays about, Star Wars is a different movie if you have a different editor than Marshall Lucas, for example, or that sort of thing. So did you pursue any of the editing opportunities, or did you go straight into writing?
I did some. I did mostly freelance. The main problem, I'm here in Texas, and this is what 2006, 7, 8 around there, where it's working from home and video production wasn't even a thought.
Right.
And unless I wanted to move, all the way to California, which I couldn't do at the time, wasn't a viable option. You just, you're limited here where I am in Texas for it. So I did a lot of freelance stuff, for other websites, doing little featurettes and whatnot. Nothing too big. And then, I kind of shifted into, well, if I can't do what I want to do, I can at least talk about what I love. So
Right. Well, that's great. And so what were some of your earlier writing jobs, some of your early writing gigs?
The first thing I ever got started doing was for a gaming website called The Cartel.
Okay.
I don't even think it exists anymore. But I started with them, just doing, news and some editorial stuff. And they were really great, really helpful for teaching me the ins and outs of doing this type of stuff. Because,
right.
I'd always loved writing, but I'd had no real experience with that type of journalism.
Right.
And man, the skills that I learned from them are just invaluable. And then I got started working for a local movie blog. It was called The Movie Pool. And I eventually became the editor over Movie Pool, which we then a few years later transitioned to Cinelinx. So it was pretty straightforward thing there. But I've done other stuff for a couple smaller magazines. Martial arts magazine, bigger martial arts magazine. Stuff for Nintendo, a Nintendo fan magazine, and a couple other stuff like that.
Wow! And then you ended up getting you got some bylines on StarWars.com, and you're doing some work for Star Wars Insider, and that's where you and I have a direct connection. Is I actually covered the New York premiere of Phantom Menace for Insider, which was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
But geez, that was so long ago, and it's just a little blurb. I was so excited. I wrote this article, and Scott Chernoff edited it down to a little box in the corner of a page, but that's all right. I was happy with it because I'd been doing. But it's funny. My first gig with Star Wars Galaxy magazine back in, I don't know, 96 or something like that, was 150 words. And it was the hardest 150 words I ever wrote, trying to, because Steve Sansweet was like, it has to be 150 words and it's got to be. And I was like, a lot of authors say this, a lot of writers say this, I can write 1,000 words, but make me write 150 and that's, or 200, or keep it small. It's a bit tough.
Oh, I know. So. I did some, for about a year, I did some work for Publishers Weekly for their indie section for indie books. And that was their thing. It could only be 200 words for every review. I was like, you got to be kidding me, because they'd send me books that were 500 pages long.
Right. Boil this down to 150 words if you don't mind. That's pretty funny. That's pretty wild. So so tell me a little bit about what Cinelinx does and the kind of stuff that you're doing there for those that may not have checked it out.
Well, Cinelinx is just, we're a normal movie entertainment blog. We like I said, we started out as the Movie Pool. We were definitely dedicated pretty much just to movie and film. And, at that time we were working with other local indie filmmakers, and we were doing more articles focused on that type of stuff.
Right.
But then we kind of shifted to more of the entertainment stuff and covering, that stuff. And then we added in a video game element because I've always been a big gamer, and we started bringing in other contributors that love games too. And we finally said, well, we just need to add a game section to the site. And that's when we decided to rebrand as Cinelinx. Just kind of move a little bit away from just the film stuff, but also a big part of that was the card game that we developed. My buddy and I, Gabriel, who also helps run the site, he's more on the back end of things. He lets me do all the front end stuff, but we had this idea for a card game, and we ended up running with it with a Kickstarter, and ended up getting 3 times our goal.
Wow.
And we've been Slash Films featured it all. We've been featured in a number of places. We've still got new expansions and stuff coming out, so And that's the site is part of it. Then we have the card game, so it kind of all
It's a
goes together.
multimedia venture.
Yeah, we're just right now we're just trying to be a hub for all nerds.
Right.
It's one. Our slogan is about movies, games, geek culture. We try to cover all things that nerds enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, and it is so funny how I think that there's such a fairly fluid crossover between genre, and I surprised myself at how much I so quickly got attached and excited to WandaVision, for example, and I think a lot of people surprised themselves by like this is something I care about. I had no idea I would want to watch this every week, but that's great, and so those connections are really real. So what other fandoms are you a big part of? Obviously you're a big Star Wars fan. I'm looking at your background there, and you have one or two Star Wars collectibles, but
yeah. Star Wars is the main thing I limit my actual collection to,
right?
Because I just don't have the space.
Mm.
And this is just my office. I have a couple storage sheds and stuff just backed up. So I try to keep if I buy toys and collectibles, I try to keep it to Star Wars. I used to be really big into comics, and I still read them, but I don't hold on to them like I used to.
Right.
But as far as other fandoms go, probably the biggest next one would be anything monster movies. Grew up with Godzilla and and King Kong, and honestly, I think I've said this online before. That those movies had almost as big an impact on my love of storytelling in general as Star Wars has. I include Jurassic Park and monster movies too. Jurassic Park's a big one for me, but so probably monster stuff. Not a big scary movie guy. I watch a lot of them because my girlfriend loves them, but I'm not big on scary movies.
It's funny to hear you say that because when I was a little kid, like 6-7 years old, our local New Jersey, New York area at the time, they used to do like every couple months they had Monster Week at like 4:30 in the afternoon, and I watched Godzilla versus everything, right? And I became a huge Godzilla fan, and it's funny now. I always talk about the connection to Star Wars that me and my son have, my 8-year-old son, but these Godzilla movies that have come out. He and I've really connected over those as well. How do you feel about the new ones? And are you psyched for Godzilla versus King Kong? You gotta be, right?
I would stab somebody for Godzilla versus Kong.
I'm glad you're in Texas and I'm not, because no,
I've been looking forward to that movie. I've been keeping up with that one. Almost as much as I have any other project. Just I really enjoyed the 2014 Godzilla. I think it was a great way to bring it over to America. And then Skull Island was a really great monster movie.
I love that. That was just a fun, goofy movie. It was great.
That was so much fun. And, King of the Monsters. I know a lot of people had problems with it, and there are legitimate problems with it.
Sure,
but I don't care. I still love that movie. I love watching that movie.
Yeah.
But I still watch the old Godzilla movies. Heck, when my my youngest was born, she was 3 or 4 months old. I was still home with her, and it was still that time when they're up at night sometimes. For some reason, there was 1 month, one of the movie channels, that's all it was on. Was back to back Godzilla. So every time I got up to feed her or was hanging out with her, that's what was on. So we always watched Godzilla together.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And yeah, I think the new ones are a ton of fun. Now, okay, so you're obviously closer to that fandom, probably the Toho and all that stuff, but do they I love I don't know if I love it, but I notice it feels like they're trying to create a little bit of competition among King Kong and Godzilla fans, just sort of who do you pick for this? But their fandom has managed to avoid becoming toxic, I think. Now, you follow many more fandoms than I do, probably just as a result of what you do. But how would you compare the fandom of Star Wars to other major fans, whether it's Marvel or DC or the MonsterVerse?
Oh man, That's tough. I mean, we always talk, and people that follow me online know I always talk about the toxic elements in fandom, and
Yeah.
the main reason I do that is not just I don't like talking about that all the time. I really
Sure.
don't. But it's one of those things. If you don't call out something that you love, then people don't feel safe talking about it, and
Right.
that's not how it should be. People should feel safe to have those conversations, and until we get to that point where we can say, look, that's not okay, in certain situations, to talk about, then we can't have those fun conversations like we think we used to, but the
Yeah.
problem's been there for a long time. And I think a lot of different fandoms are starting to come and have that reckoning with
Mm.
certain elements. And I would argue, despite the fact that I highlight certain things more often than others, I really, really feel that it is a ever shrinking part of fandom
Mm.
spaces, because a lot less people are starting to put up with it. They're loud, and they feel like they're big, and because of how loud they are and prominent they seem to be. But the numbers don't lie in terms of fan interaction and money being spent and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's funny. This whole last couple days, actually. I mean, it's been obviously years, but last couple days specifically, there's been so much talk about Kathleen Kennedy. I feel like I'm ready to write her biography. I've gone through. I feel like I'm her defense lawyer. I don't need to be, but I feel like it's because the arguments don't make a lot of sense to me, honestly. And it comes from a spot where there's a bit of I don't know. The thing that triggered what you said was it is a small group of fans, right? I mean, and that's I'd love your opinion on it, because I feel like some days it's bigger than I think it is, but I'm having a tough time getting my arms around it. It's like if you're the loudest in the room, if there's three really loud people in 100-person room, you
Mm-hmm.
think there's more of them. But I don't know if is it a growing piece? Is it shrinking, or is it just so part of our echo chamber that it feels bigger than it is?
Well, I mean, those are good points too. But on the whole, I would say it's shrinking. I mean, they've been there forever. And the thing is, in the early days of the internet and fandom and forums and
Mhm.
stuff like that, they were there. But at the time, with new people getting in, these were, I mean, for lack of a better term, they were gatekeepers.
Right.
They'd been there from the start. They knew everything. So if you wanted, to know more, these are the people you went to. Now we're getting
Mhm.
to a point where, that knowledge, whether it's through Star Wars and their own data bank, or just, people getting in their own books and stuff, and or having access to more people to talk to, they don't have to go through those same channels anymore. And so they're still trying to be gatekeepers. And I think that's where a lot of that toxicity comes from.
Mhm.
Um, and they just can't be anymore. And
Yeah.
now that we're able to push them aside, we can see that, look, it's okay for everybody to love it. Because back then, we'd have these same problems.
Sure.
People talking about black actors in Star Wars is not new.
Right. Right.
It wasn't new even when Empire Strikes Back came out.
Yep.
And the thing is, nobody was at a point in those early days of fandom and online forums where they could really say anything about it.
Yeah.
Because the people running the forums were the people doing it.
Yeah.
These were the ones, because they'd been there for so long, it was their space. And you start to say anything about it, and they just block you, kick you out of the forum, and you couldn't. So if you wanted to engage with other fans, you had to kind of put up with it.
I think part of the challenge too is that it becomes it's part of more a political perspective, I think, in that and they say the three things you should never talk about are politics, sex, and religion. So but here on Around the Galaxy, for some reason we've decided to talk a little bit about it. But it's and I think that's where it becomes very personal, right? And I think people start to the it's not a political agenda. I mean, arguments that I hear about what Star Wars is doing is, they're Kathleen Kennedy is trying to alienate the fans, which look, my degree is not in business. But if it was, I would know that I'm not going to spend $4 billion to alienate my fan base. It doesn't make any sense. How do you respond to, so let's talk specifically about what happened today. So today was another Disney shareholder meeting. Bob Chapek was doing his thing. They were taking Q&A, and somebody specifically asked when they were going to fire Kathleen Kennedy, right? They took and Chapek's response was, what was it? It was, I had it here a minute ago and I seem to have lost it, but it's essentially, we're lucky to have that kind of talent. She's not going anywhere. Where do you think this fantasy of getting rid of Kathleen Kennedy comes from?
Well, for Star Wars fans looking for a scapegoat is nothing new. We saw it in the prequels where, for people that weren't around for the fandom discussions during the prequels or were too young to really think about it, it was always, we need to take it away from George. George doesn't know what he's doing anymore. We need to take it away from him, or, he needs help, all that kind of stuff. And Kathleen's just the latest one. And that's really all it is. She's a convenient scapegoat for absolutely everything a fan disagrees with. But she is also somehow not responsible for all the things they like. Which isn't how her position works at all. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there are things that I disagree with. I would still have loved to have seen a Lord and Miller solo movie instead of Ron Howard's. Not that it was bad, but I like Lord and Miller. So I don't necessarily agree with every decision, and I mean nobody in any company should. But to the thing that they've gone to now is that she is absolutely to blame for any misstep that they perceive, right? And most of them are perceived.
Well, and it also is like it's coming from people who don't understand necessarily the movie business, for one. And I don't want to look down on people who don't, because it's an interesting business. I don't understand the sports business, but I do know when my Flyers make a mistake and I'm not happy with it. But and we do call for the coach's head, right? And we want we wish they didn't trade this guy or that guy or whatever. But it doesn't become. I have never been in a situation where I have told another Flyers fan that they were wrong for liking a particular player on the team or anything like that. And that's kind of the closest thing I can bring it to. But it's interesting that you say, looking for a scapegoat and forgetting that, the Phantom Menace and actually the prequels in general, there was that entire, that film, The People versus George Lucas, which is essentially early Phantom Menace kind of thinking, right? That early, blame George, he stole my childhood, he ruined my childhood. Now it's Ryan Johnson ruined my childhood, or Kathleen Kennedy ruined my childhood. And it's as somebody who understands stories, what's your perspective? Because to me, it's crazy to think that because Luke Skywalker didn't do what you expected him to do, and in actuality, a lot of things they said he didn't do, he actually did do. But that's not to take apart the film. But where do fans draw the line? And I would love to even connect it even to the Zack Snyder cut, which is coming in a couple of weeks. This sort of fan ownership or fan kind of belief that this is their story, not the story of the person telling the story. It's causing some of this rift, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to the idea. So many people, I mean, obviously, I'm sitting here in a room filled with Star Wars stuff,
right?
But so many people, they attach these things to their entire personality, and any type of attack on that thing becomes a personal attack. Not necessarily attack on something they enjoy, but then it becomes something personal. And I don't know when that shift started. But the example I always go to, and where I really remember it most clearly, modern times, was Mass Effect 3.
Mhm.
And the ending, all the gamers hated.
Right. Yep. Yep.
I mean, I loved it, but I remember articles upon articles and petitions about it. And I was doing some writing at that time too on game stuff, and I was covering it and talking about it as well. So maybe it's because it was my first, you know, dealing with it from that perspective that I really, think about it. But they ended up adding, some DLC that changed part of the ending,
Right.
to suit fans. And, sometimes it's good to say, hey, it is good to listen to, a large body of people that are obvious, want something. But
Right.
at some point, you have to take agency of, well, this is mine. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I think I miss most about George Lucas is he did not give a crap at all. If you didn't like it, okay, well, all right, sorry.
Right.
He was that way with his, the special editions, and every time he made a change with the DVDs or the Blu-rays, he's like, it's mine. I do what I want, which, I mean, and sometimes you're just along for the ride. And I think that's not a bad place to be, just enjoy it. Especially now, there's so much Star Wars.
Right.
It's kind of insane. There's more Star Wars now than I ever imagined
Yeah.
possible.
Yep.
If you don't like something, there's something else you can enjoy.
Right.
You don't like a book, don't read the book. You can read other books. They didn't just disappear.
Right.
So,
it's interesting because who was it? I can't remember who it was, but I had one of the authors on who wrote some of the EU stuff, and his perspective was, am I disappointed it's gone? Yep. Could they have taken it out of print? Yep. But they kept it there, and it's still available, and it's a version of the story.
Yeah.
And nobody has killed it. And here's the example I use all the time, and that is like, all right, when the last couple Metallica albums have not been what I like, but I still have the first 15 years of Metallica that I can go back to and listen to whenever I want and turn it up and enjoy it. And hey, I don't have to listen to Saint Anger, and I can tell I'm not going to meet people on the street and say you're an idiot for enjoying this. You clearly don't understand Metallica, right? That's not my place to say. And it's
weird.
It's a weird ownership, right?
Yeah, it's so bizarre to me, and I think some of it boils down to there's a fascination with canon, not canon, in this idea that, well, if it's not canon, then it's not real, and none of it's real. I mean, it's all
right.
It's all fake. You just have to choose which fake part you want to enjoy the most.
Right.
Some people, I've been following, in between other books that I've had to read either for review or, for fun and stuff like that. I've been going back and rereading a lot of some of my favorite Legends books, just, because some of them I haven't read in 20 years. So, it's fully possible to enjoy both.
Right.
I reread the Jedi Academy trilogy, just last year, which was, I think, one of the first Star Wars books I ever read when I was like 10. So, going back to that was great. And yeah, it's weird because we know, different stories now, but
Sure.
I mean, I can still enjoy it for what it is. And I think that really what everybody needs to come to terms with at some point is that sometimes you just got to let go and enjoy what you have. If you don't enjoy it, well, you don't enjoy it. I mean, there's plenty of new books, Star Wars books I haven't enjoyed, but I don't talk about them because what's the point?
Yeah. And it's funny there. I even catch myself sometimes on social media. Like I want to make a comment about something, I don't know, anything that I didn't, I didn't love the way this looked in this show or whatever, but to point that out it doesn't help. I think that there's this belief that there is a need to to either be the smartest person in the room or something like that. And I think that the biggest problem with it is, look, like you and I we probably have different perspectives on different parts of different Star Wars stories.
Mhm.
I don't know where you come down on movie A, B, or C, but I'm sure we have different perspectives. And if we did, that's totally fine. But it's when it starts to become attacks and vicious. I posted something today about sitting in a room and pulling up your Twitter feed and deliberately looking for words that are going to piss you off to go and then yell about them. When I post something and I see something from somebody who doesn't even follow me, it tells me that they were on the lookout for this particular word so they can come and be angry. I don't understand what that perspective brings, and it's a weird place to live, I think.
It's nothing about, I mean, how do you enjoy life like that? I don't understand. I mean, it's really hard for me to understand, and I get it. You dedicate decades of your life to enjoying something,
right?
And then so you do feel there's this personal agency to it because you've dedicated in all this time. But so when something doesn't go your way, it becomes almost personal. And probably when I was younger, I had periods of time like that too, where you know they killed one of the characters in the Legends books, and I was like, all right, I'm done. But obviously, I wasn't done. But maybe it's a growth thing. Some of them I know aren't very old. They're not. They're still growing. They're still learning. But again, and I think it's important to talk about. And I've said this a few times, but it's always good to remember. You can be critical of something.
Sure.
And you should be critical of something. Especially if there's something that's actually really wrong with it. But you can, highlighting problem areas or something that's problematic doesn't mean you can't enjoy it or that you don't enjoy it.
Right.
And I think too many people, it becomes a black and white thing. It's like, if you have any criticism, well, you can't be a fan of this specific thing.
Right.
Or it's either you love it all the way or you don't.
Yeah.
And, I have plenty of problems with, various Star Wars movies, but I have a blast when I'm sitting there watching them.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, even the worst Star Wars movie, I'm going to enjoy, and just because it's what it is, and not because I'm a shill or not because I'm a blind loyalist. It's because it's a place that I love to go visit. And I think you were going down a road that I think is interesting, because what it does do, and I find for myself, is it does kind of put you in that defensive mode where you end up defending things from a different perspective because you're being put on the defensive, because it's a bullying tactic. And that's a word I don't like to throw around that loosely, but the reality is a lot of I had a post just the other day about for Women's Day, for International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to anybody who's listening who's a woman. But the response of against Kathleen Kennedy and against the way people responded was with like vitriol, like pure anger. And it doesn't, I can't understand that. I mean, like I said, I'm sure you and I, if we spent another couple hours sitting over a beer talking about Star Wars, we would disagree on every fifth thing we talked about, right? Just because there's so much Star Wars, and there's, I'm bringing a 50-year-old perspective, you're bringing a however old you are perspective, and you came in through different places, and that's great. And even the not my Luke Skywalker people, I get it. I understand where they're coming from, but there's absolutely no excuse and no reason to be aggressive about it, because as you said before, and I think you nailed it, none of it's real, right? It doesn't. It move along, right? I say that all the time, like, move along. This isn't for you then. And how do you handle the social media attacks? Because like I said, I've been following you for years. You get some heat. How do you respond to that? How do you deal with that?
Heat is one way to put it.
I'm being polite, Jordan. I'm being polite.
I mean, you know, and I don't know. I guess part of it is not that I don't care,
Right.
but I don't care. You know, we're online yelling at each other. Who cares?
Right.
You know, and the only time I really get, you know, and the main, like I said, the main thing I try to do is I will call out, you know, bad behavior, because most of the time the stuff that I call out is specifically targeting, you know, a person or groups of people,
Mhm.
and makes them uncomfortable. You know, it puts them in a place where they don't even feel like talking about Star Wars anymore. And
Yeah.
that's not what I want. I want, you know, to hear all these perspectives, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. They shouldn't
Right.
feel like they're unsafe to do so.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where it boils down to me calling them out. And for me, that's a big part of, you know, why I don't let it bother me, is because, I mean, I'm doing the right thing. If I
Yeah.
can make this fandom a little bit better for somebody else, you know, or make someone else feel comfortable in speaking up and sharing what they love, then it's worth it. You know, it's
Yeah.
worth, you know, ending up on these goobers blogs and you know, hit lists and all that crap and their YouTube videos. It's fine. You know, it's fine. You know, they can send all they want. It doesn't bother me. You know, as long as I'm being, you know, true to myself in trying to make this a better space for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah.
Let them come.
And, you know, it's interesting because I have only been back in the social media, not back in the social media space heavily since I started Around the Galaxy about 2 years ago. And about a year and a half ago was my first sort of encounter with a bunch of people who disagreed with my perspective. I'm being extremely polite. And look, I'm not. Yeah, I'm going to say this very delicately. I'm very fortunate that I am in a fairly good position mentally, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
have a wife and family, and I can deal. We all deal with our different stresses, but the amount of stress that I felt in my first encounter, my first attack, my first mass sort of targeting from these groups,
Mm-hmm.
it stressed the hell out of me, and it put me in a
Yeah.
spot where I like it affected my mood for 24 hours. It made me, but the thing that really was clear to me, and scary to me, was a lot of people come to social media to be able to have the conversations you're talking about, to feel safe, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to say, hey, look, my life right now is a mess, but I have Star Wars, or I have
Yeah.
DC, or I have whatever you're into. And to suddenly be in a position where, because I'm taking a position in something I love, I may have loved a piece of The Last Jedi, right? And actually,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it's one of my favorite of the sequel
Yeah.
films.
Yeah.
But if you're going to attack me and tell me I'm wrong and that I'm part of a Kathleen Kennedy cult and that I'm a
Mm-hmm.
shill, and like, if you're not in the right headspace, honestly, I can see
Oh
where this
yeah.
can push people over, and that's completely unacceptable. I'm fortunate that I can handle it. You have a really great perspective on it, but if you don't, it's not
Oh
good. But
yeah. It can be terrible.
yeah,
And they've, you know, and I've seen in times where they've gone after people where they can see that they're not prepared for such an encounter, and they will just hammer them.
yeah,
And you know, it's funny now because I'll be, you know, on my phone or whatever, and my girlfriend will lean over. It's like, "Are you arguing with people again online?" And it's like, "No, not this time." You know, it's like, because she'll get on, you know, she's not really online very much, social media, but she'll get on, she'll read through my posts, and she's like, "Oh my god, you call a lot of people dipshits," and and, and she's like, why do you always go after these people? And, you know, I kind of explain the same thing. It's like, you know, I'm in a place where I can, you
yeah,
know, and if somebody, you know, doesn't, you know, we got to keep this space for you know, next generation. Star Wars, from how it looks, is going to be going long after we're gone,
sure,
you know,
yep,
which is fine. Uh, but you know, at some point, you know, my kids, their kids, grandkids, whoever are going to be having these conversations, and do I really want them to still be dealing with people saying, oh, who cares if, why does he have to be black, or what, why do we have to have a woman in the lead? And
Right.
I don't want them to have these conversations.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting. You have kids. I have young kids as well, and to watch a generation of children that I'm so hopeful don't start with the label, right? Like my daughter was fortunate in that, like, her first Star Wars experience was Rey in The Force Awakens, and I've said it 100 times on the show that she when she saw pictures of Rey before she even saw the movie, she was making her own little 6-year-old Rey costume, right? So she was like all in, and that was amazing. Instead of, and thank God they're African American kids who are like, hey, I see myself there. There's Asian Americans who can look and see Rose and be like, hey, there's me. Whereas, look, you and I are lucky. There were men to look up to in the first Star Wars films, right? Very easy for us.
Yeah.
And even Leia, I mean, who was such a strong character, but one of, the only woman in the galaxy, right? Leia, or Carrie Fisher used to joke with that all the time, and she happens to be Luke's sister. What are the chances? Spoiler alert! Hope I didn't ruin it for anybody. But it's really important, and I think that I'm glad to hear that you are of the mind that it is a small, very vocal group, because Disney and Star Wars are not going to change the question. And I do have the quote here that they asked Bob about the whole Gina situation. And Chapek said, I don't really see Disney as characterizing itself as left-leaning or right-leaning, yet instead standing for values that are universal. That's what I want from any story I watch, right? I want that wherever I'm going to get that. And it's kind of the real world, and I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're finally getting to. Diversity is a part of the world. You
Right.
go to school with a wide, diverse range of people, from a very young age, but you have movies that don't reflect what it looks like if you just walk down the street. I mean,
Right.
in just about any neighborhood. Well, I say any neighborhood. Most neighborhoods, most cities, most towns, that's how it is, regardless. And you don't really see that in movies. And some people, they don't like it for a number of reasons. Not all of them are necessarily malicious. Some of it boils down to they just, they don't connect with films in that way. And I can understand that more than others, but, and that is reality, that they are working towards making these movies, whether they're fictional, that take place in space, whatever, to more resemble what our life looks like. And I think that's a good thing. And Disney still has plenty of ground to cover there.
Sure.
But one of the things I mentioned today online was a statement like that. Just even, thinking within the last 5 years from a major company would have been almost unheard of.
Right.
Because everybody would shy away from that because it seemed too, either too political or, just they didn't want to deal with it, any type of backlash. But now they're finally starting to take a stand on these stuff, which I thought is really a big step. They still have work to do in terms of, the content they produce, but that's a major step for a statement to make, which, I really enjoyed.
Well, and I think and this is where, you can go back and forth on political views and dollars and cents, but at the end of the day, look, I hate to bring it all back to money, but it is. Disney is not going to take a stand like that if there's not money to be had. And the reason there's money to be had is because that's the way the world works, right? It's a small group of people that still can't get into this evolution of where we are societally, if that's a word, but it's there. I'm just making up words that works for me. But it's being done, it's being done because it's the right thing to do, but the right thing to do also happens to make you money. and to have that awareness. And I'm not saying they're doing it just for money, but they're not doing it because it's making them money, right?
Money's. I mean, any major company, that money's going to be, a major factor in what they do. And yes, I mean, it's a good thing that we're at a point now where those are the kinds of movies that are making, the most money right now, which is great.
Yep. 100%. Well, great. This was an interesting part of the conversation. I'm glad I find, I've been sort of tweeting back and forth a little bit and sort of following and getting involved. So this was great to actually have the conversation. But at this point in the show, I do have my 10 question segment where I'm gonna hit you with some questions. And I always say there's no wrong answers. I won't judge you, but I can't guarantee that others won't. So here we go.
Get ready.
Okay. For what?
Every time I run that, I think I got to turn the volume down on that Falcon just a little bit. That's a little intense. So here we go. So the first question is, what is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
Favorite movie is still Empire Strikes Back. It's probably definitely the one I've watched the most. Second favorite is Rogue One. Mostly because every time I watch it, I seem to enjoy it just a little bit more, which not, I enjoy all of the movies, but not all of them grow on me the same way. I mean, I love Mandalorian. I was never huge on the Clone Wars until the last couple seasons.
Yeah.
But, it's a big thing. It's a big thing. Book is, oh God. That one changes on a daily basis.
Yeah. It's there, and it's because there's always new stuff coming. Are you reading the High Republic stuff? Are you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
High Republic, good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it'll be interesting to see where that goes from a Star Wars lore perspective. Part of me feels like they're almost trying to build sort of a mini or a very sort of the reason I think Marvel and DC can have so much flexibility is because there's so much to build on that people have read, and I think maybe perhaps they're going that way. I think it's only a matter of time before we do get some either live action or even animated thing there. But I'm digging what I'm reading
for sure.
It's pretty cool. Cool. Okay, so the second question is, if you could visit any Star Wars planet, this is just visit now, which one would you choose to swing by?
Naboo.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's pretty and about the only planet that looks somewhat hospitable.
That's true.
I don't want to go to Hoth. I don't want to go to Tatooine. Mustafar, absolutely not. But I can chill on the lake on Naboo.
It's nice, and it's actually, it's one of the few planets that seems like it's a little more Earth-like. It doesn't seem like it's dangerous unless the Trade Federation shows up, right?
Every other planet, something huge wants to eat you.
Right.
But Naboo looks okay as long as you stay out of the deep water.
Right. Stay away from the bigger fish, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna be fine. Cool. Excellent. Next question is, would you consider yourself a rebel or an Imperial?
Oh man. Rebel, which is, feels contradictory because the bulk of my collection is actually centered on villains.
Right.
But generally speaking, I'm a rebel.
Yeah. It's funny. And it's one of those questions where when I ask people, I feel like I'm going to be able to guess easily what it is. And I'm always a little bit close, but at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, look, coolest helmets, right? I only have 2 Rebel helmets. Of course, you can't really buy too many Rebel helmets, but that's a conversation for another time. But the Empire stuff just looks the coolest. Like the Empire stuff that's what pulls you into Star Wars, I think.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be those guys.
No. I think it's important to remember villains look incredibly cool, but they are still bad guys. We should not want to be the bad guys.
Right.
Which is always cool, but not be bad.
Right. Collect their stuff. That's okay. But don't be their stuff. That's awesome. What's your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
Oh man, lightsaber.
Yep.
You know, there's something about. I mean, that's my phone's ringtone is a lightsaber igniting, and it has. I mean, it's been that way for God, decade at least. And so every time I watch the films, I keep thinking my phone's going off because it's a lightsaber. But I just even now, it doesn't matter how many times I hear it. There's something about hearing that snap hiss
Yeah.
that just lets you know exactly what you're getting into.
That's great. That's a cool one. The next question is, who's your favorite droid?
Oh gosh,
It's getting harder with every new thing that comes out.
That's hard. I mean, and especially because I know some people are going to go nuts over this. I'm not big on the droids.
Yeah.
Like, it's never been the droids have never been huge for me. I mean, they're cool. They all
Yeah.
look cool, but as far as collection goes, unless it was packaged with a villain, I can't really I can't really think of very many that I have. I guess I would go with, if we're thinking pure droid, gosh, probably L3 from
L3 is
Solo.
very cool.
She was cool. She had great personality, and I really loved what they did, visually with her and all that stuff. And I would, in the book, even the follow-up book, Last Shot, had some stuff with her that I thought was great too.
Did you read the From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back?
Yes.
The story that's in there
Yes.
by Brittany Ann Williams is really cool too. Yeah. Even though she's already part of the Falcon, to make that connection to her was really cool, I thought.
Yeah.
So, cool. Yeah, it's I used to, when I first started the show, it was, who do you like better, R2 or 3PO? And but I realized that there's too many, because there's a lot of BB-8 love, there's K2 love, there's L3 love.
Yeah.
So you got to put it all out there. Chopper, there's
Chopper, the murder droid.
Yeah. He's Chopper's one of those, I have to admit, when I first saw him, I really didn't love him. I still don't think I'd love him, but I like what he's about.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. So the next one is, if you could own any starship or vehicle, I'm taking the Falcon off the table. Too many people say the Falcon. Which one would you want to own?
That's an easy one for me. Darth Maul's Sith Infiltrator.
Oh yeah.
I have, like when I say villains is the main part of my collection, Darth Maul is the main part of my collection, and has been for ever. So, I mean, hands down, I remember seeing that ship, from the trailer, and of course on the big screen, and I was like, that is the coolest freaking thing ever.
Yeah.
And it's gone. You only get it for one friggin' movie.
Yeah. So it's I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I had written a fan fiction novelization of the Phantom Menace, because I firmly believed that Darth Maul was the most wasted villain, not just in Star Wars, but in like movie history. So I wanted to build upon that. And yeah, the Sith Infiltrator was just that's one of those
coolest
things.
ship around.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. That's a cool one. Next question is, okay, what is your favorite Star Wars collectible that you own? Doesn't necessarily have to be something you can buy. It could be, but what's the thing that you'll never part with?
Holy crap, that's tough.
I'm looking around your room. I'm like, I don't even know where to start with this question.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much. I've been collecting for over 20 years, and just amassed a ridiculous amount of crap. Good crap, but
lots.
And I swear, every day that one can change. Especially if I get something new in the mail. Guess what? That new thing is going to be my favorite thing. Yeah. Probably one of my favorites, and it wasn't necessarily hard to find, but I actually have it handy. Is my 35 millimeter reel of the Episode 1 trailer.
Oh wow! That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Because I mean, I love trailers.
Right.
I've always looked at trailers as an art form of its own. And one of the, aside from villains, the other major thing I collect on top of books is media. I have Star Wars on a handful of different Laserdisc formats, and even gosh, I got the old 8mm
Wow.
demo, snippets that they had on 8mm. I got all those. So when I found that, because that's still my favorite trailer. That's an amazing trailer. So I found that, 35mm copy, and I managed to get it for like $20, and I love it.
I've never seen that. I think that's really super cool. And you're right. I think as a Star Wars fan, it may be the most important trailer of any of them, because 76 we didn't care or know, or a lot weren't alive. Then the other trailers weren't a big thing, but Phantom Menace was the first. It's the first trailer that I can remember that we picked apart every single frame and had a theory for absolutely everything we saw in that trailer. Yep, that's. That's a great one. That's really cool. That's a very unique piece. All right, cool. Question number 8 is: if you could be any Star Wars character, who would it be and why?
Gosh, I feel like if I don't say Darth Maul, I'll be betraying everything. Even though he's a bad guy, but he's so cool. I felt when I'd been in martial arts for a couple of years when episode 1 marketing stuff started coming out, and I was instantly drawn to Darth Maul because he was a martial artist,
right?
And that was always cool. Not only Ray Park himself, the actor, but in canon in Star Wars lore, Darth Maul was master of the martial arts, and that was a big part of his character, and the one of the main reasons he used essentially bow staff lightsaber, and so that always drew me to him. And of course, I think they've used him great in the various ways they've brought him back, and they still kind of got that element of martial arts being a part of them. So I'm gonna have to stick with my man Maul.
You can't go wrong with that. We did an episode with Mike Chen and Michael Morrissey, who both have written from a certain point of view. We talked about the 3 best developed Star Wars characters, and we talked about Ahsoka, and we talked about Anakin, and we talked about Maul. And a really interesting sort of thing that struck me as we talked about it was that Maul is essentially, he's the Joker of Star Wars, right? He's a cool looking character. When he came back in Solo, I didn't mind that I had to explain it to the guy, my friend who I went with, who didn't know what happened to him. Clone Wars. But it was just great to see him back. And the Clone Wars, the Siege of Mandalore arc cemented him as one of the wildest villains ever. I thought he was fantastic. He's so great.
Yes.
I hate when I do my show and I just end something with "he was so great," because I just feel like, but sometimes you just got to fanboy. Sometimes you just got to do it. There's no way around it. It's funny. All right. Question number 9 is: what is your favorite Star Wars moment? Your favorite moment in the films or TV or book, even?
Oh man, again, that seems to change depending on what I'm watching at the time. But the one I've always come back to, and I've written a couple articles about it as well, is the scene in Empire Strikes Back where Luke can't lift the X-Wing. That whole line of dialogue from Yoda talking about, luminous beings and everything being in your mind, and it's still a powerful message. And for the time period, and as far as storytelling goes, seeing your hero fail, wasn't the norm. You're used to these type of adventure movies where the hero never loses, and is always awesome. And so to see this really shows that they have to grow, and which is an important message on its own too.
Yeah, I think that's a great moment too, because you think about problems people had with some of the sequel representation of Luke, and Luke has never been a perfect figure. He's never been the true hero. He's never known exactly what to do, and I think that's what makes him a hero. Look, I didn't think I'd love Captain America until the Marvel movies came out, and I became a Team Captain guy. But he's perfect, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't lose. He makes the right decisions all the time. Luke, hey, look, the whole concept with Kylo Ren, it was a moment of weakness, and it was a moment of just something to think about. And if you go back to the point you're talking about, that you're right. Any other movie, any other hero, that would have been the moment where he goes to that next level and he brings the X-wing out, and big lesson learned and win.
Yep.
But it didn't work that way, and I think that's a really important thing. That's a great point. I love that. The final question is, what is your favorite or go-to Star Wars quote?
Hello there.
Yeah,
I open every email with hello there. I'm not even exaggerating. You can ask anybody, all press contacts, Lissa from Disney Publishing.
Yeah. Yep.
Every email. Hello there,
How many hello there's are we going to get in the Kenobi series? We're going to get a couple, or at least
it's going to be insane.
It's my here's my called it culture comment. That'll be the first line of the series. It's going to be hello there. I don't know how it's going to work and what.
I will absolutely lose it, because that would be amazing. I don't even care. It would be amazing.
Yeah. that's yeah. And it's funny. And the reason I changed it to go-to quote is because, I think there's a favorite quote, but if you're a Star Wars fan, like 90% of the people that I have on this show, and like you, where Star Wars is a part of your life, you end up with a quote that you end up just using all the time. And it's almost, sometimes it's kind of like a test to see like if the people in the room are like, are they with you or not? Do they know Star Wars, or are they normal, boring
How
people?
nerdy can I be in this
right.
room? Yeah.
Right. Can I tell them about my collection, or should I just kind of keep that to myself? Well, Jordan, this was a ton of fun, man. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Absolutely.
And
I appreciate you inviting me on.
this was a ton of fun. Where can people find you online?
You can find me online at Jordan Maison, spelled just like you see it here. I try and keep my social simple. You can find me online pretty much anywhere using that handle. Or of course on cinelinks.com, or at cinelinks, spelled with an X at the end.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much where I am.
And I didn't mention it, but you have a really great charity that you're a part of, that or that you started.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that before we let you go.
Oh, yes. It's called Real Outreach. I started it a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, 2018. And it's all about taking kids, underprivileged kids, to enjoy a night at the movies, which is something a lot of kids in need can't do. It's a luxury, it's an extravagance. I grew up without a whole lot. I mean, we were lucky to go to the movies once,
right?
A year when I was growing up. But every time I went, it was this just experience, and it was huge. And I know that there's so many kids that don't get that experience these days, and they just can't afford it. I mean, heck, even taking my family is at least, I'm at least budgeting $150 to $200.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
And that's just how it is. And these kids can't afford it. So I started Real Outreach. The whole goal being we would take, foster families or groups from these foster homes and advocacy groups specifically to enjoy a night at the movies. Of course, that got thrown out the window last year.
Right.
But, we've been very blessed to be able to work with a number, we were able to take them to early screenings of Star Wars movies and, Captain Marvel, we've been very fortunate to work with studios on these things. And now we have been able to pretty much put together a portable drive-in type theater experience now that I spent pretty much all of last year trying to build and put together. And we're hoping to do our first event in the next few weeks and have it all set up where these families can stay in their cars so they can still be safe,
right.
But still enjoy a new release movie.
Oh, that's great. That's very cool. Well, that is awesome. And they can find information. People can find information about that where?
At if you're on Twitter, it's at real REEL, as in film reel outreach, or realoutreach.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jordan. I hope to have you on again sometime, and let's keep in touch. Just stay safe on the internet, man.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Talk to you again. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. Thanks to our guests, and thank you for hanging out. If you had fun, please like, subscribe, and share. If you really liked it, please feel free to head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeyondTheBlastDoors. You can also find that link on BeyondTheBlastDoors.com, where you can keep up with this show and all the shows on the Beyond the Blast Doors network, as well as find a link to our merch store. And if you use the code ATGCast, you'll get 10% off your order. So until next time, this has been Pete Fletzer, and we'll see you for our next trip around the galaxy.
Around the Galaxy is copyright 2021 Pete and Seat Studios. Our music is brought to us by the band Silver Colored Knob, whose music can be found on Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find music.